not to blame anybody, but it's totally on Danny.
I don't
Yeah.
want to blame the millennials, but if at first you don't succeed, you should just quit.
Yeah.
Just quit. Just give up. It's too hard.
Oh man. I mean, that's a great segue into today's
It actually is.
topic, which is if we had to start over, if let's say we had to quit and we forgot everything we know, how would we
Hmm.
start?
That is part of it. Yeah, how did we get started and how would we do it again if we had to start over? I
Yeah.
think those are good
But
Oh,
questions.
I want
before
to ask a
before we do
question
that,
about that.
well, I just
Hmm.
wanted to say good morning and like welcome people
Oh
and
yeah, what day and
say
Morning,
time is
hi.
it?
Chris.
I'm completely lost.
It's Saturday, September 14th at 9:03 a.m. I know we're
Woo!
we're way late today.
Mm.
It's crazy.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But
hey.
good
Good
morning,
morning,
everybody. Good
Greg.
morning, Greg. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Dan Garrow.
Thank
I
you
like
so much for joining us.
I always like to say good morning back. It's nice.
I
Good
know.
morning, Randall.
Day back. Good morning, Randall and Danny and Chris and Greg
I had a question. So
and Tristan.
suppose you did forget everything and you had to start over. Do
Yeah.
you guys think that knowing what you know now, you would progress more quickly, or do you think it would still be as long and as difficult as it was the
Hmm.
first time?
It's a good
I
question.
wait, if we started over knowing what we know. See, this is always I hate this
Well,
question because it's always
you
like,
don't know the actual knowledge, but you know like the meta type of
yeah,
thing,
so
you know.
you
You
could
know the
plan maybe
metadata.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. I will say my morning breaks. My problem with these questions is always like it's like it already happened, so it's hard to imagine. But I could definitely give advice on how I would do it differently if I guess that's one way to think of it, but I don't know if it would work better for me. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
guess like I think like it's funny how it works because I think we did like I don't think I would do the boot camp again, honestly, if we did it again. Now I think the interesting part was that was helpful in the sense that it did expose me to like what technologies were new, what was out there that I didn't know about. But I think honestly, I would have just stuck with independent learning, and I think I would have worked with you guys every Saturday from the get-go, and just kind of created our own plan.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I if I really think about it, it's hard for me to give a solid answer on that. And the reason why is it sort of has to do with like my origin story because I didn't necessarily just jump straight from something else into web development. I sort of slowly creeped into it over a long period of time. And so I think a
You
lot
just
of
got to
the
creep. Yeah.
yeah, I had these
Just
creepy
creeping around the
vibes.
like
Yeah, the creep vibes, creeping
I was
around places.
talking
I was
about
like
more the TLC
lurking.
song.
Oh,
You just
no,
creep.
no. I was
Yeah.
thinking like I'm creeper.
Okay.
Um, no, but I think in a funny way, I think a lot of people are like that. Like they sort of lurk around coding for a while until they
A
actually
bunch of creepers and
Well,
lurkers.
I think that's a big I think that's a big problem with a lot of stuff though, is like we do that with a lot on the outside and kind of dip our toes in
Yeah,
because it's like something we like, but we're for whatever reason, maybe we're afraid of making the change or afraid of like taking it on. And then hopefully something happens that like kind of pushes us further fully into it, which I think
yeah,
you need that because I think it is hard to stick with, especially when it's something that you can learn on I mean, everything you can learn on your own, right? But like it takes a lot of effort and it does take a lot of time and it takes a lot of planning. And I think that's the hard part for people is, without some sort of structure, I think a lot of people they'll not be able to keep that commitment up
yeah.
fully.
Yeah,
I want to.
looking back, it feels like it took a lot longer than I would have liked it to have taken, and it feels like it should have happened a lot more quickly than it actually did.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I think also like it's. I'm trying to think about like if I went back and did it
Well,
again,
take
would
a
I be
quick,
able to do it faster? And I think one of the main things that just held me back when I was in the very beginning was just being scared of generally
yeah,
breaking things
yeah,
like or taking risks in coding. I know that sounds so crazy, I guess maybe for me now, but like actually going to build stuff because I think the number one best thing you can do to become a better developer is to actually build projects and not like little
yeah,
shit tutorials that you find on YouTube that are like tiny little things. Like build a full app from start to finish I think that is the number one thing. If I just did that more and more and more when I was starting out, and this is coming from like the web development perspective. I think if you're doing cybersecurity or machine learning or anything else, that discipline, it might not be building websites or apps. It might be focused somewhere else, but actually doing the thing that you're going to do in a job, I think is the number one thing that will push the needle forward. And that was what I was scared of in the beginning because I was like, I might break this. I don't know what this thing does, and I don't want to mess with it until I understand everything about everything. And I think that was probably the one thing that held me back. Like, there's just this general fear of like I might break something that's irreversible. Um,
Even though nothing is, right? And it's like
no,
it's
nothing.
that
Yeah,
no, I totally know what you mean too. It's that fear of like it's like that imposter syndrome too feeling that creeps in there, right? That you don't
yeah,
know everything. And like it's scary because like it's not just building an app, you also have to deploy it. You also have to make it live, right? So it is like there is that challenge. I think when I think about this looking back, like I think that projects are I totally agree with what you said. Like that is the best way to learn, especially in web development, is build stuff and put it out there and actually put it into
yeah,
production. But I think looking back, like I think I did waste I know I wasted some time on like dipping my foot into other languages because I was scared to break stuff. So I
yeah,
just start learning something else, like the beginning of something, because it felt like progress. And
yeah,
if I did it all over again, I wouldn't have done that. I think I still would have learned Python because I did enjoy that and that helped with backend stuff anyway. But like,
yeah.
I think I would have skipped like, I did dip my feet into PHP for a little while and like other stuff that I think honestly I wouldn't have bothered with. I would have focused more on just building projects and getting them out there because that is like the best thing you can do, without a doubt.
Yeah, I agree. Um, all right. Well, I mean, part of like the whole purpose of today is to share our individual origin stories, like how we actually got into into development up to the point that, what we're doing right now. And then if we did have to go back to the very beginning, let's say you wipe your memory of all the coding knowledge that you have, except for like Randall was saying, sort of the metadata of like, these are the options. What would you do? Right? Like, how would you go about learning to code? So before we get into like how would I start over, you guys want to share your origin story, like what got you interested, how you found yourself in the field of development?
I got I got bit by a radioactive spider, and then I found they had these crazy abilities where I could just
And
shoot
did your
webs
your
all
uncle
over the
your
place.
uncle told you, right? With great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wait,
Uncle
I'm
Ben. He
confused.
also he
I'm
also is a
confused
very
how you turned into a
popular rice guy.
developer and not Spider-Man.
Wrong side job.
Oh, you got to clarify. When you say origin
Oh,
story, that's where
no, no, no. Wrong origin.
Who wants
But,
to go
Okay, I'll
first?
go
but go
first
ahead,
if nobody
share
else.
your
Yeah.
Well,
origin
share your origin. Yeah.
story.
I don't care
It's
about
like just
Spider-Man.
silence after that.
All
Crickets.
right. So
You
let's
shoot
see.
World Wide Webs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I let's see. I was always messing around with computers. Like I remember when the Gateway 2000 computer came out, that was
Yeah.
huge. That was like
Mm,
a pivotal moment in my life and in childhood. But I never really did any programming or anything until I was in university. And not even really intentionally. It was just I started out studying biology to become a veterinarian. But then my friend told me you could do anything in undergrad and still be a vet. So he was studying physics. So I just hopped on the bandwagon and studied physics as well. And we had to learn programming for physics. So we were learning C plus back in the day, or C plus plus. And it was extremely difficult because I was a whole term behind everybody else. And not only did I have to learn C plus plus, but I also had to learn Linux, which I had never touched before. And so that was like I would say I didn't learn any of it. I was just basically like scraping by. My senior project I did with a professor, and his whole thing was in Fortran. So he wrote this book called Quantum Mechanics in One Dimension, and his whole thing was in Fortran. I had to learn Fortran 77, which is a super old programming language. And when I graduated, I was probably the only person that year who graduated knowing any Fortran because programming languages move forward. And so when I applied for jobs, a large one of the government organizations needs somebody who knew Fortran. So I got hired immediately as a contractor for them. And basically, I was just like a junior developer working with a bunch of people who knew what they were doing. But I was very lost at the time. I had no idea what I was doing really. And this was like back in the day, pre-internet. I was working in a basement with a bunch of guys who hated their lives, and you couldn't look up stuff online. I
And
remember I had to
that didn't
order.
seem like a future you wanted, with
Not, not,
all those nice examples around you of people happy with what they were doing. And
not at all, not at all. And I remember like I was trying to figure this stuff out, and they didn't have much documentation on it at the point, and you couldn't look it up online. So I ordered a used book from Amazon, and it took 2 weeks to get there. And I was just sitting twiddling my thumbs at the computer, like trying to figure out what the heck to do
You're
at first.
aging yourself. Those were the days
Yeah,
before 2 day
yeah,
delivery.
I know,
or
right?
like instant
It's
Prime
delivery.
delivery. Yeah, same day delivery.
Yeah, so it was terrible. Like to be honest, it was terrible. So I quit, and I just went and I did other stuff. I went to vet school, became a veterinarian, and then like fast forward a bunch of years, did some SEO and stuff like that, and eventually got back into coding and that type of stuff a number of years ago. But to be honest, like I think the meta thing of if we could do it over again is ever since I saw the movie Hackers back in like the 1990s or whatever, like I knew that's what I wanted to do. I just thought I wasn't good enough to do it. And it's kind of like that thing that they say, like the only thing holding you back from the life of your dreams is the story you keep telling yourself about why you can't have it. And
Yeah.
so that was basically me for like so long. And even after we did the boot camp and we did all this development stuff, and even though I had experience developing and all this different stuff, I thought that hackers had something else that I did not have or could not have, or it was some next level thing that just wasn't achievable. But then like we all talk about like a bunch of existential stuff all the time. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna die anyways. If I die and I don't at least try this, it would kind of suck. So why don't I at least try it? And so I got a master's degree in cybersecurity, but that was kind of not very useful. It was just laws and stuff like that. It wasn't until I actually started doing the hacking stuff on like try hack me, hack the box, capture the flags, that type of stuff. That's like super fun, learn a whole bunch of stuff and that's where I am now. And so if I could do it over again, I think I would have probably just started down the hacking route a lot earlier and just I guess it's difficult to say because like I still think that right now is the pinnacle of time to be learning any type of coding
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
Like just comparing what's available right now, you can look up videos on YouTube, you can read all types of free resources online. There are excellent books all over the place. Comparing that to back when I was first a developer, it was terrible, like terrible back then to try and learn any language. And so like now it's an excellent time to learn, but I would have definitely gone down the hacking stuff sooner, and I wouldn't even have done the masters because that was a waste of a year and a half, pretty much that I could have spent just like hacking boxes and stuff like that, getting experience. So
Yeah.
that is my experience in
Love it.
Nice.
development, my
Nice.
origin story.
Nice.
Yeah,
Spider-Man's origin story.
Where
I
he
know.
comes
And
from.
then, I got bit by the radioactive spider somewhere in there, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
And that, now you have to do that too. It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want
Right
me to go
on.
next?
How about
I can.
yeah, go for it, Danny.
All right, I can go next. So I mean, it's funny because when I think back, like I always liked tech, like especially hardware. I've always been interested in. Like I have always, just my whole life, like I've always read like spec sheets for new stuff coming out, just because it interests me to see how things are developing and all. And that's always been true.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, like I did, like in high school, I did like I remember doing a web development course in high school, and it was like it was just HTML at the time. That's all it was. So it was like not so super exciting. Like you said, it was hard to get things done. It was hard to do things, and it was not easy to look stuff up. Like there was no internet. I mean, there was barely, basically, I should say, an internet. There wasn't a lot of stuff out there yet. Um, so then I went to college and I ended up just falling into philosophy, which in hindsight was good because I studied logic a lot, which is very helpful for with computers and systems and stuff. Um, and then I ended up just teaching for a while, which I enjoyed, but like I just noticed like one, I hate working for other people, and two, like then the universities just have gotten worse and worse over time, and I just found myself kind of miserable, with what I was doing. And so then, I think it was like I had started thinking about like picking up learning development again. I started messing with Python. There was great resources out are available, like all kinds, like you were saying, books, tutorials, all kinds of stuff. So I started messing around with Python. Then I had an opportunity to take on a job that was way out of my scope at the time, but I was like, yeah, what the hell? Because it was from somebody, it was through a family connection that I got it. So I was building a Python web app for a company. And I knew I had plenty of time to do it, so I just did it. I mean, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort, but I did figure it out and was able to do it. And thank God for all the resources, right? And then, we ended up starting the boot camp, I think about like a year after I started that, maybe or so. And that was cool because it just exposed to a lot of other stuff. Like I didn't realize like, at the time coming into it, when you start developing way back with like when it's just HTML and then you realize all this other stuff's out there. And that was really eye-opening to me because like I didn't realize just how many tools had been created and how like dynamic and like just crazy the tech industry was in that sense. Um, so then like I started to shift slowly back into like, I think more into JavaScript type frameworks and stuff like that, which I use mostly now. But that's kind of how I got here, I guess. If I had to looking back, like doing it over, I think my biggest thing is I don't know, and this is the hard part because I think this is the thing I struggle with too. Same thing, right, as Randall was saying, like I don't know if I would have done it back then anyway. Because frankly, like it was like it wasn't that like I didn't think I could. I think it was just that it was more boring to me back then and it's more exciting now. Like especially with like web apps now, like because back then you that was still software days where like if you wanted to build
Yeah.
something that everybody could you had to build it for a system. It wasn't like now you can build these web apps that are crazy powerful. And that to me is like super interesting. So like I don't know that I would have started sooner, but I'm super grateful that I did transition because I'm so much happier now doing it. I love creating stuff. That's the other thing. Like
Yeah.
I really love about tech is I like creating things and making things and putting them in the world. And so that's a huge part of it, I think. It's just fun to make stuff and solve problems. So I think if I did it over, I think the main thing I would have done differently is just like not, I would have well, ideally, I guess, focused on projects, not get distracted by shiny object because that is the hard part about now is there is so much stuff and so
Yeah.
many options and there's so much resources that it's like it's so easy to just go from one thing to the next without actually learning anything. So I think there would have been I would have been a much more focused learning path if I started over. I would have done like Python, Django, JavaScript, JavaScript frameworks. Pretty much that's it. I think that's what I would have focused on. But yeah, I mean, I think yeah, that's about it.
One thing that I did want to just touch on is you said like the shiny object syndrome. And when you mentioned that, one of the benefits that we've had of all doing this together, working together and meeting up
Yeah,
regularly every week, and what we do now with Web Dev Incubator is that we help keep each other on track. So like it's a lot
Yeah.
harder to actually get lost down shiny object syndrome because at most you'll get lost there for a week. And then when we all check up on each other, we do the accountability, all of a sudden it's like,
yeah,
oh yeah, this week I was just on a tangent. I got to get back.
Yeah.
I know we did the quarterly planning and this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, so I got to get back on track. So that's been really helpful
that
for
has actually
helping to
been
stay on
yeah.
I
track.
actually wanted to say too, I think
Our Saturday meetings
I
have been
think it
super helpful.
actually helps sort of satiate that shiny object
Yes,
syndrome
that
as
itch.
well because we get to share like what we've each been doing. And so I get to hear a little bit about cybersecurity. I get to hear a little bit about Python. I get to hear about like all the other projects that
Yeah,
people are building inside the incubator. And so you get that satisfaction of like today, literally before the call, Randall showed us something new that he learned in cybersecurity, which both of us were like, damn, that's so cool, right?
yeah,
It would have taken me like a couple of years to get to the point where I could actually figure out something like that, but I can sort of like experience it through you and I don't have to like feel the need to learn more about it because you're showing me and I'm like, okay, I'm getting some like something that applies to me in the current moment without distracting from like what I'm learning, you know? So I think that's a really cool benefit as well. Um, yeah. Well, I'll share my story. I
So
mean,
what's your superpower, Ross?
I I shoot spaghetti out of my fingertips. It's not that super. It's like when I'm hungry, I can have free spaghetti.
Mamma
I'm
mia! I
no,
suspect
I
you eat the
think
ball.
you did make a
I
great
got
point
bit by
though.
an Italian man, and now I got
Yeah,
spaghetti out of my fingertips.
this really, really hungry Italian guy bit me.
Yeah,
The no, I think
it
you're
was
right though.
Mario.
That was a good point though. Like I think our meeting I mean that our meeting every week that helped me so much, just staying focused and staying on track.
Oh my God,
And
yeah.
like, and I think you're right too, like, because like, especially early on, like when we were all kind of like dipping our toes into different things, like it was just fun just to like see what was out there, see what everybody was doing, and just to like, I know I learned so much just from those meetings, like about things that like sometimes were adjacent to what I was doing, but it still applied and helped me develop too. So I think that was crucial. I think I'm glad we did that, and I wouldn't change that in our learning plan at all because I think that would help more than anything else.
And
Yeah.
that would probably be one of the biggest meta things that I actually would keep if I forgot everything is just having a direction because I was so lost for so long in terms of what direction to go in. And even after the boot camp, like I remember someone posted in the group about how they're 5 months into a boot camp and they still feel like overwhelmed and lost. And I responded, I was like, yeah, it takes like 2 years to wrap your head around what you learn in a boot
Yeah.
camp. And most of them are between 6 months and 11 months. So you're not going to
Yeah.
wrap your head even close to
Yeah.
around any of it for
No.
another year and a half. But it's like, it took probably until at least a year after the boot camp until I really knew solidly what direction I was going in. And I think we all kind of
Yeah.
messed around after
Oh,
that, trying to
I
figure out
actually
where
want to
we were
say
going.
something about that because I think it'll be helpful for a lot of people who are in here or who are listening and are in a boot camp or have been considering a boot camp. Um, I mean, I'm going to share my origin story in a second, but I think out of many people who have taken a boot camp, I probably had a lot more experience in web development and like the general things that you learn in a boot camp more than most other people. Um, at least on like the vanilla, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript side. But I still felt completely overwhelmed. And so I just sort of wanted to give like a PSA, like a public service announcement of if you're in a boot camp or you're considering taking one, you're not going to understand everything at all. Like you're not even going to come close to it because like what Randall just said, it's just way too short of a amount of time and they're speeding you through all of it. I don't think anybody in our boot camp really understood anything that was going on until multiple months or years later of processing and continuing to learn these things on your own. But I think the single best thing that you get from a boot camp is sort of just a structure of like this is what you want to be. This is the road to start you down the path, right? And it's not like
Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand too, and I think this is one of the huge misconceptions is that a boot camp is not an A to B thing. It is an A to continue on your own sort of thing. Like it's not like there's no end goal that you're actually going to accomplish when you're done this boot camp besides getting a flavoring of different technologies, but you're not going to land a job.
Nope.
You're not going to be prepared for anything. It's
No.
literally just like when you're teaching a kid to ride a bike and the first time that you let go of the seat, that's what a boot camp is. Like you're
Yeah.
like there you go, you're on your own. I hope you stay going, but you might fall over, you might have to pick yourself up, but this is it. You're on your own now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think no, with that too, I think like looking back, like I think like just putting up on the wall or something when I was learning too, like just if you keep persisting at this, you will learn it. I mean, that is
Yeah.
awesome. That is
Yeah.
true. I think it would have been helpful not to be so scared about breaking stuff early on. That would have helped me advance a lot faster. And just
Yeah.
realizing you're not going to break anything. You can rebuild it. Who cares? Like, but that just goes away at some point, which is interesting. That's the other thing I think to remind people, because we were talking about this in the group. I think I was talking to, might have been Randall or Bryce about this, but like, I noticed this in my own journey. Like, there's points where like all of a sudden this stuff just sinks in. All of a sudden it's
Yeah.
like you wake up one day and now you know this thing. Like somehow somebody phrased it a certain way and like it clicked. And now
Yeah.
like it's just you're so much better off moving forward after that. But you just gotta wait for those moments to happen and stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'll give my origin story and it
Yeah, I
made
really want to know how and where you were bit.
yeah. You will not believe where.
It's an uncommon place.
Anyway, so it reminded me of years ago working as a bicycle mechanic. So one of my like old jobs was a bicycle mechanic, and people, as a bicycle mechanic, like people would, come into a bike shop with something broken on their bike, and you're like, "Hey, what's broken?" And then they're like, "Well, I bought this bike in 2019," and you're like, "I didn't need your whole story of the bike. I just want to know what's broken." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, but so my mom bought it." and it was like on discount, and the guy was really nice at the store. So anyway,
Let me actually start with the first bicycle I had.
yeah,
Then you
yeah.
can really understand.
They're like, they're
I
like,
need
no,
to
no,
put
no.
this in context so you can
Before
really
we
see
get
the
to this
picture.
one, let me tell you the 10 other broken bikes that I had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm gonna try to keep this somewhat short, but my origin story of like becoming a software developer, I think started when I was like, I think 4 years old. And I think my mom was studying for like a master's degree and would had purchased a computer, and then we had a second computer that she sort of just sat me down on, and I played, you know, games with those like whatever 8-inch floppy disks like Reader Rabbit
That
and
could break
uh,
instantly if you touched them
yeah.
the wrong way
Yeah,
or
and
looked
you
at
needed
them
like
wrong.
16 discs to load up one game that was like 8-bit quality. So that's I think when I sort of found my love for computers because I was just giving free access. And I want to mention this too. I think I thought about this when I forget who was talking about something related to this, but I think it's kind of interesting. I'd love to see what happens in about like 20 years from now because I think when we're all of similar generation and when we were growing up, technology was like at its forefront of, like it didn't exist before us, right? Like there was no computer, there was no cell phone, right? So we were like indoctrinated into technology as we were growing up. And I think it gave us and our generation an appreciation for technology. I think nowadays, like I talk to like my kids and they're like, they just think it's a piece of glass or a box that just displays, TikTok
Information.
on it or something. Um, they even have more of an appreciation than most kids, but I don't think there's that many kids that realize like what it takes and like where we came from with computers to have what we do today. And so I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out in people's interest in continuing to learn coding and like experience the other end of everything that's on a screen, right? Is like somebody has to put that there. And we talk a lot about that in our family is like whenever you're using something on a phone or a device, somebody literally had to think through your experience on that. And so nothing is coincidence. Like if you're seeing an ad or you're getting something, like there's a reason why that's happening. And if you start to think about those things when you're using these devices, it changes your perspective of like what uh, coding and technology is all about. That said, let me get back to my story because I see Randall laughing there. Um, so yeah, I started when I was 4. I always loved computers. My originally when I went to college, my freshman year, I was a computer science major because I loved it. But at that time, it sucked. And there was like one day specifically where I remember I was in a coding lab for like 4 hours trying to debug. I was learning Java at the time, not JavaScript, Java. And I was trying to debug some computer code that I had written. And I was like literally in a computer lab for 4 hours trying to find a fucking like semicolon or some shit and I couldn't. And it was like 4 hours of wasted time. And I was like, there's just no way this is happening for me. Like, this is not how I want to spend the rest of my life is like digging through code for semicolons. And so pretty much in that moment,
Foreshadowing, right?
yeah, I know, right? So pretty much
Exactly.
in that moment, I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna do this. So I switched to chemistry instead and pursued chemistry major. And then I graduated college and didn't use any of that. Um, continued, basically taking like odd jobs for a little bit out of college, and then um, a few years outside of college, I learned about SEO, search engine optimization, and became interested in that and started doing work with that, which led me down the road of actually building websites again, because a lot of SEO is building blog websites, right? And linking them to each other. So I would build a lot of like WordPress sites and I've, built Shopify sites and Squarespace sites, all these like low code solutions. Um, And also through that, like you learn a little bit of code, right? Like I learned a little bit of PHP, a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, a little bit of JavaScript through all those things because I would have like clients who'd be like, can you add some whatever, like a pop-up or whatever? And you're like, okay, now you have to figure out some JavaScript or whatever. So through the years, I learned a little bit, but I didn't have like a full understanding. And then I think, I went through the same thing that all of us did, which is like I was working a job at sales. That's what I did for a long time. I was good at it. And I just got frustrated. And I basically I was working a job where I saw a bunch of developers who had it easy and not easy necessarily, but they had it nice. And I was like, I want to do that. And so that's when I decided like I'm gonna take this seriously and make a change. I had been wanting to for a long time, but I think like you guys mentioned, the single biggest thing that was holding me back was not knowing the direction that I wanted, not knowing where I wanted to go. And I think, from all the people that I've talked to inside this group and through action calls and everything like that, I think that's probably the thing that holds most people back, even if they don't realize it, is that understanding your path and where you want to go is probably the single hardest thing to do, but it's also to me, the most important thing because it determines basically everything that you're gonna every like choice that you're gonna make. And there's a lot of choices that you're gonna make, right? Because you have to choose: do I learn this? Do I learn that? Do I pursue this? Do I build this? Do I do that? Where do I spend my energy? That's one of the hardest things, like to decide as a developer is like, where do I spend my energy and my time? Because as soon as people start to realize too, and you can see it inside with all the people inside the web dev incubator. As soon as people start to realize that you are a software developer and you're like pretty good at what you do, you're going to get a million people who want free shit. They
Yep.
want you to build shit for free. And they're like, oh, but I have the best idea, right? Everybody has an idea, but nobody can take any action on it. And so you're going to get a lot of people who are like, I'll give you equity or basically give you nothing, right? And so you have to start to decide where
They
that
gave you
stuff.
their idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had an idea.
So that said, I think and this is going to be hard, but I think one of the best things that you can do, and maybe this is why boot camps are somewhat attractive, is because they give you this buffet of different technologies to look at, and you don't really learn anything, but you sort of taste all of it, right? And so it's a little bit easier to decide like what I want to do. But ultimately, I think learning what you want to do comes down to some self-reflection of like what am I good at? And then also just like playing with technologies, right? It takes
Yeah.
time. Like I don't think any of us is just like,
Well,
that was what I wanted to do. Looking back, it's that easy. But
I think the other hard part about that too, looking back, is like, I think about this a lot, like in college and stuff. Like, I think I just also it's like a matter of maturity too, like
yeah,
knowing what you want to do, and like, I think sometimes it does like everybody's path's gonna be different, and sometimes it's gonna come later because of that. Like, and that's okay
yeah,
though. It's totally. I think that's the cool thing about it is it's totally doable. It just
yeah.
takes commitment and it just takes some
But
effort. But like you
I
said,
would say
learning what
this
you
though.
want to do, I think, is very helpful because you can very much get a clear path going and then figure it out
Yeah,
and make choices.
I agree. I would say this though, if I had to start over, knowing like nothing even about the path that I wanted, what I would say is this is that the best thing that you could probably do is just choose a path.
Yeah.
Even if it's the wrong path to start out with, right? But choosing any single path to say like I'm going to go do this because it gives you a direction. Otherwise, you do this like orbiting thing, which I think a lot of us have done. I did. I know Chris
Yeah.
inside this call did. I know you guys probably have a little bit where you sort of like orbit around the idea of becoming a software developer and like you play around with one technology for a little bit and then you play around with something else and you never actually dig deep into something. Go ahead,
Or
Randall.
build anything.
This may be an unpopular opinion, especially from people who want to know like machine learning, data science, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
like I think that for the majority of people, going the web development route is the best way to go
Yeah.
because you can learn whatever technologies you want to learn afterwards. But
Yeah.
guess what? It's all going to have to be served up on the web. You're going to have to interact with all web resources anyways. So you might as well learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the frameworks, all that stuff, because then no matter what you want to do, whether it's machine learning, AI, data science, you can build the websites for it. You can interact with the backend for it. Whether it's
Yeah.
cybersecurity, you can do all the stuff that you need to do in cybersecurity because you already learned all the technology. So
It
I
Yeah.
still
also,
think for the majority of people, that's probably one of the best options out there.
And you can build
yeah.
projects and see them real time, which I think is hugely
Mm.
helpful when you're learning. Because like you can actually see what your stuff's doing, that it's working, that it's failing, why it's failing. And I think that's not the same in every language. So I think that is a huge deal. Plus, whatever you learn is transferable. And once you learn one language, you can learn another. It's not that hard. You figure out, you get over those, because most of it is just like we've talked about. Most of it's fear. It's fear of success. It's imposter syndrome. Most of that's what's holding you back. It has nothing to do with your ability to learn or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to 100% agree in that web development to me is the core of software development at this point in time, and it's like foundational. And so even if you do go, I mean, there's plenty of developers who've just skipped over web development completely and go to like C or Rust or whatever it is, do machine learning, AI, VR, whatever, and they find success in it, and that's fine. But I will say this: I mean, I've worked with developers where you're like everything essentially touches a web now. So you work with developers who are like back end developers or whatever, and they don't understand basic like HTML or CSS. And it can be the most frustrating thing because you're like, why am I teaching you these foundational things when you're like this expert machine learning developer? You should understand like basic HTML.
It's
Uh,
not that hard,
so
yeah, in comparison either.
yeah, so I think ultimately it's not going to like secure you a job necessarily, but understanding web development, at least the core basics, is going to make you a more valuable candidate because you at least understand everything that's going on. And like I can't think of a single company that's a tech company. I know there are some, but like most tech companies have something web facing. Like
Well, everything is now because you
yeah,
don't build software, you build web apps or you build
exactly.
APIs that people can access for your service. So it's all
Exactly.
associated around the web. I mean, browsers are powerful now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we should
So I
yeah,
do agree. Yeah, like I think that's very important.
it
So
is. Anyway,
with that, it's already 9:40. We zoomed through this one today, but any
But
closing thoughts?
was that because
Um,
we're using Zoom for
I
the?
yeah,
will make one closing point because I was thinking about it. I remember in when you know the Apple Classic computers.
yeah, the
I
bubble
remember, yeah,
thing,
the Mac
the
Classics. Yeah,
colored,
I
yeah.
remember having one. And this is back in the day, but its RAM was 1 MB. So
Oh
keep
my
that in mind.
God. Yeah.
One
Dude,
megabyte of RAM,
I
dude.
just bought a
1 MB.
2 terabyte solid state drive.
Yeah,
And it was like not even that expensive. I remember when that would have been like
dude. I remember my laptop.
$1,000.
Yeah, my laptop. I remember in undergrad was like 1,500 because it had a DVD drive and it had 10 gig hard drive, and that was
Yeah,
huge.
dude.
Like it was
Nice.
10
crazy.
gigs. Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. We're aging ourselves. All right.
hmm
Well, good morning, Anthony. Um,
Also, I want to say thanks for everybody sharing. You guys like put a
yeah.
lot of good stuff in the chats and comments and stuff. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I love how people are sharing inside the group too. Like I saw Bryce posted something this morning. If you guys have projects, post them in there. We love seeing what you guys have. You can get feedback from the group. But yeah, with that, I hope you
If
guys
you're looking for more accountability and the next step forward, and basically working as a junior developer with, I mean, essentially the job of a junior developer, then check out the Web Dev Incubator.
yeah,
Ping any of us, ask us, type web developer down in the comments. We'll reach out to you. Because this is basically the next step. This is the thing that was lacking in our boot camp, was basically
yeah,
they brushed over a whole bunch of technologies and then said, "All right, you guys apply for jobs, have fun."
Yeah,
And
put
yeah.
it
everything
was
on your
kind of the
resume. Good luck.
Well, I
yeah.
mean, what we did when we built this incubator is we tried to solve all the problems that we found in the industry after going through a boot camp. And basically a lot of the stuff that we just detailed, like you don't know what path to go down. You have mentors and coaches who are like, "Hey, let's discuss, what you're into. Are you a creative person? Are you more analytical person?" A bunch of different things so that we can build a path for you, right? That's what we do. That's the first step is you build your quarterly plan so you know where you're going. then you have the accountability of like every week you meet with
Hmm.
the same people to discuss what you've been working on and how much further you've been progressing, right? So you can't just skip out on a week. You can't copy and paste your way through a week of coding, right?
Which is what
Um,
it's like working with an actual team in the real world.
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. And then we build actual projects together. I don't know if I can share, Danny, but I'll share this just to show everybody like what we've been building because I think it's
And
kind of
You can
we
share.
use the latest technologies, so that all the modern frameworks that real companies are hiring for, that's what we're actually building in. And we use GitHub so that everybody can contribute, so you learn how to use that type of stuff. So this is an idea of what we're doing.
yeah. I don't know if you guys can see this. So we've
Can
been
see
building
it.
this website. It's called Yum Finder, and it's basically so that you can find restaurants in your area. You can spin a wheel, or you can just do a text search and you can say like pizza, New York City, and then you can get all the pizza shops in New York City. Pretty sweet. We've been building this as a team together inside the web dev incubator. And I don't even know if everybody's seen this yet because I've been putting some of the components together that everyone's been building, but it's pretty sweet. You can build
Yeah, it's
projects
awesome.
exactly like this. Uh,
Real projects that
and,
actually
and
work
things
using
exactly
modern technologies and
and
actually
things that you
deploying
can
them.
show off, right? That's the
Yeah.
important thing. If you want to find a job, you're gonna have to show what you've done before because people aren't just gonna hire you based on your word. Sorry, but that doesn't work anymore. They need to see that you've actually built something. And so if you're too scared to build something or you don't feel confident yet, the whole idea is that we handhold you the whole way so that you feel confident, you understand exactly what you're doing, and you can make those mistakes in a safe environment with people who can give you guidance. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, reach out to us, let us know, drop the word origin story in the comments and we'll reach out to you or just ping us on Facebook. Just reach
Or
out
spaghetti fingers.
Yeah,
or
something.
spaghetti
Anything.
fingers.
Just put any
Yeah.
nonsense word in there. We're
Just
good.
put it all in caps so we know.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, and
Or Mamma Mia.
All
we
right.
do a free action call to see, basically where you are on your journey and see if the web dev incubator might be something that works for you. And if not, no pressure. But yeah, so reach out to us. We'll also throw a link in there for the action call if you want to just schedule one. You can also do that as well. With
Yeah.
that, it's 9:45. We have our call with everybody inside the web dev incubator at 10 a.m. every Saturday. So that's in 15 minutes. So I'm going to call it. Thanks for sharing your stories this morning, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We had a lot of people today. So thank you
Yeah.
all for tuning in and participating. And with that, have a wonderful Saturday. And we will see you, as we always do, bright and early next Saturday at 9 a.m.
Sounds good. Later, guys.
Later.